Hello and welcome to Dee's Media World. Today we're doing another Inuyasha review in my Inuyasha series review. Episode 15, Return of the Tragic Priestess Kikyo. So this is the continuation of the last episode, and this episode begins literally right where the other one left off. Inuyasha survives the fall from the bridge, and so does Kaede and Shippo. And basically, to say the least, what happens in this episode is that Kikyo comes back to life, so to speak, comes back to life. They elaborate more on that later, but Urasue's entire purpose was to kind of get Kikyo's soul back, make her body again out of clay and bones, from our understanding, and get her soul back so she could get jewel shards for her. Well, that failed like I thought it would, because the moment Kikyo actually comes together and kind of gets Kagome's, or they're both or so, I guess they share the same soul, so to speak. When that happens, she kills her with no question. She doesn't even acknowledge Urasue. She just kills her. Nobody says anything, and that's it. It's kind of like, okay, and Kikyo actually has these interesting powers that I think I've only seen in this episode, where she kind of shocks them. And maybe it's because she just came back to life or something, but she shocks Urasue, she shocks Inuyasha a couple times. That's the best way I could define what that was. But in any case, her soul is very angry, and it leaves Kagome's body. And speaking of Kagome, on the show, I think this might be the only episode, at least that I can think of, where Kagome basically does not speak the entire episode, to my knowledge. She yells a little bit when her soul leaves her body, or when she's trying to get it back into her body, but I don't think she actually really said. She says a little bit. I'll phrase that. She does say a little bit. She's like, "Oh, this is disgusting." But in terms of being in the episode, she really doesn't say. She doesn't say much because she's unconscious or something, and she's trying to get her soul back. One thing that's interesting is that Kikyo's soul comes back to her when Inuyasha says her name, and they don't really elaborate on that at all. Kikyo's "Don't say my name." Obviously Inuyasha can't hear her, and then Inuyasha says her name, and the soul leaves, but I'm not certain as to why exactly was that the case. Is it because she's mad at him or something? Because other people said Kikyo's name, and she didn't. Her soul didn't come to life like that. So I don't know if it's because it's Inuyasha or because she's so pissed at him. I'm not really sure what there's no explanation for that. Let's say she's really pissed off that Inuyasha's alive, actually. And she says a lot of stuff. I don't remember her saying, but she says all kinds of stuff, half-breed. What she call? I think she even calls him a half-breed at one point, and vile beast, and all this stuff to him because she's so pissed at him. But basically, the whole point of this episode is to say that it's not as simple as it looked. It isn't. The reason Inuyasha was pinned to the tree is because Kikyo thought, or Kikyo knows or thinks that he betrayed her. And that's essentially what it came down to. And we actually, for the first time, learned what their relationship was. They don't say it. In the Japanese version, actually, if you watch the subtitles, when Kikyo is accusing Inuyasha of betraying her, and he says in English, I meant every word. I didn't betray you. I meant every word I said when I wanted to be with you, or whatever. In Japanese, he says, "I truly loved you." And I was like, why didn't they say that in the English version? Because it makes it even more clear, they were actually in love. Because in the English version, they never say, "Oh, I loved Kikyo," or "I loved Inuyasha," or something like that. It's just kind of understood, I guess, to each other. But, he says that in Japanese, but she basically thinks he betrayed her, and Inuyasha claims that he didn't lay a hand on her. And we actually see his point of view towards the end with the flashback. And I like the flashback. It's very beautiful flashback. They use it a couple times in the show, but the animation is very beautiful. The colors are wonderful. The sunsetty colors, the show doesn't have, even though they're currently in the feudal era, it's back then you could tell that it was almost a different scene in a way. You feel oh, this was actually 50 years ago, because the colors, the tones and things are a little different. They're the same, but they're so vibrant. And the reds and the oranges are so beautiful. And my favorite scene in the flashback is the one, they don't even speak, I don't think. And they're on the boat. I think a lot of people might like this scene. They're on the boat, and then Inuyasha is walking on the what is it called? The dock, I guess. He's on the dock, and Kikyo is walking behind him, and she trips, and then he embraces her, but the camera like goes kind of like upside down in a way, like, oh, we're not really supposed to see that. That was just between them. I always love that scene. They don't show it like a lot, but I always loved it. One thing is funny, her arrow is actually stronger than Tensaiga, and that's pretty interesting because he uses it to shield himself. She attacks him, and she talks to Kaede, which is also funny and cold-blooded at the same time, because she basically, she pushes Kaede down to get the arrow. She's like, if you're my sister, she actually has a good point. Like, if you're my sister, why aren't you taking my side? That was kind of true. I have to agree with her on that one a little bit. She didn't have to push her down and steal her arrows, but the idea of, yeah, you're my flesh and blood, allegedly. Why are you betraying me right now? But yeah, she misconstrued, because Kaede actually didn't think Inuyasha, she actually believed Inuyasha fairly quickly. When Inuyasha says, like, I didn't kill Kikyo, what are you talking about? I didn't injure her. Because when her wounds come back or come out, when she awakens, which is interesting because she's dead, but she actually, this is like the only time she actually has blood. So I don't know, there's some things that are just kind of left unexplained. But Kaede actually believes Inuyasha fairly quickly. She's like, wait, that didn't happen? You didn't kill my sister? He's like, no. And she's like, well, okay then. And I guess she's like, I know that you're not that type of guy, I guess. But we understand why Kaede believes him, I guess, is what I'm saying. Because, in any other show, I've been like, wait, why would she believe Inuyasha when, she always thought Inuyasha killed her sister? But it's because Kaede was never bitter about the thing. Like, Kaede is probably the least bitter character in the show, or one of the least bitter characters, because she's accepted what's happened, 50 years ago. Like, she's not actually angry at Inuyasha. I think initially she was more frightened of him because she thought he was reckless and careless and stuff like that and would kill humans and no regard for other people and all that kind of stuff, which is true. So, except the killing humans part. But, yeah, I was like, okay, she actually believes Inuyasha and actually takes his side fairly quickly. And I guess because they're getting to know each other and stuff like that. But, yeah, Kikyo that was actually pretty funny. The flashback, going back to the flashback, they were basically in love. And Kikyo says something that is going to come back later. I'll talk about more when I do, should Inuyasha be with Kikyo Kagome video. That's eventually going to come up because it's going to be sort of a love triangle at some point. Is that, she says something along the lines to Inuyasha, I couldn't kill you because you're so similar to myself, in that we're both kind of outsiders and we're not what we appear to be. And I found that really interesting. I really love that. That's something I'll elaborate more later. And, they agree to... The one thing I had to point out, and I never really thought about it before, maybe I didn't think about it before, but when Kikyo is like, the day they decide to bring the jewel, that day when he's supposed to be purified, why, I kind of understand, but why did Kikyo decide to bring the jewel to Inuyasha in an open field in that way? That almost seems like it's asking for danger. What they probably should have done, I understand that, Kikyo is the protector of the jewel and stuff, but that probably should have been a day when he came to the jewel instead of her bringing it to him. Like, not that it would probably change the outcome too much, but it would have helped, I think. It would have made a little more sense, considering how, how dangerous the jewel is and everything. And another thing I noticed, I was wondering, how exactly did Kikyo die? Because she gets slashed, that's clear, but it's in her arm. And she lives long enough to pin Inuyasha to the tree. So did she die because she lost so much blood? Is that what was going on? Because I actually never thought about that before. But she gets slashed her arm. Actually, the way it looked like her arm would have been chopped off to me. But her arm's not chopped off. But she gets slashed. I think she just died from blood loss, maybe. Overall, I think this is a really good episode, and it brings up interesting discussions. I don't know. I don't remember my initial feelings of this episode when I first saw it all those years ago. And I wonder if I was like, oh my god, what's going to happen next? And, the perspective of what's going on with the whole Kikyo and Inuyasha relationship. Because you thought, oh, it was as simple as, they just some type of falling out in their relationship. But, of course the show's going to bring back. And it's actually one of the most important relationships in the show is Inuyasha and Kikyo's relationship. And what happened to them 50 years ago. I don't know if I have anything else to say about it. let's see. It is an interesting thought that Inuyasha would have been human for Kikyo, and that it would have purified the jewel. And I feel like, though, I don't think it would have been that simple if it worked out, because they would have been together. Which I think the assumption is they would have been married, if it happened, like if they could be together, because she wouldn't have responsibility. What's interesting about that is that maybe we'll learn about this more later, but how long was Kikyo in charge of the jewel? Because I don't think it was her entire life. Before the jewel came into her existence, I'm pretty sure she was an adult when the jewel came into her life, or however old she is now. So I guess they said like 20 or something. But wasn't she a priestess before? Wouldn't she still have priestess responsibilities if the jewel ceased to exist? And when she still have to protect her village? Those are things that are kind of like what makes it kind of tragic, but some things that are in perspective, because she makes it seem like, oh, if I get rid of the jewel, that gets rid of all my problems. Maybe. It might get rid of a major problem, but it might also create some other problems. So I almost want to, maybe there's probably a fanfic somewhere where, what happens after, if that actually had happened, if they got rid of the jewel, and how it would have happened and stuff like that. So overall, it's a tragic story, and we'll learn more about it later, but it is kind of this was just a sampling of what's to come for Inuyasha Kikyo. I think that's all I have to say about this episode. I do like Kikyo. A lot of people hate Kikyo, and I'll also address that in another video. But I do like Kikyo, and I think her story is very interesting, and probably has always been sort of the heart of the show, is Inuyasha and Kikyo's tragic love story, because that's what the show, that's almost how it starts off, with Kikyo pinning Inuyasha to the tree. That's like the first thing you see, is Inuyasha stealing the jewel and being pinned to the tree. And the other thing with the jewel is that I was like, okay, yeah, so Inuyasha did take the jewel, and he actually did have the jewel when she pinned him to the tree, because I was trying to remember. So I guess she was slayed, the jewel went back to the village unnoticed, and then Inuyasha stole the jewel and then got pinned to the tree. So that's basically what happened. As always, if you haven't seen this episode, and it's probably too late to say this now, but if you haven't seen this episode, the link to it is down below, so you can watch it before my review. And I guess I'll see you guys next time. Bye.